Hey, this is Ramon, Channels Alpha 4, and this is Catholic Reads of the Quran. Uh, we're going to be doing Surah 4, the women, ayat 24 through 50. And this chapter begins, or this surah begins, with a definition of marriage. Here, this definition is different than that of the Greco-Roman definition, and different even from the medieval European definition. For instance, a marriage can go unconsummated in Islamic culture, while for our modern Western culture, marriage is not legitimate until it has been consummated. So that's a little key difference. And to understand this a little bit more closely to our culture, in the early Christian church, there are these idea of spiritual marriages, which is where a husband and wife would live as brother and sister, and they would never have sex. It's kind of like that, except this is more like adoption. The marriage contract here, in this culture, in ancient Arabia, as in other cultures, as in other ancient societies, has hints and underpinnings of prostitution to them. As value and worth are the way you talk about the wife, or the potential wife. And it is her, and one of the greatest factors concerning who you can marry is bride wealth. So it's important to understand that. Bride wealth is going to dictate who you can marry, kind of like how a dowry would dictate who you could marry in a Western culture at around the same time period. Okay, then we get to passage 25. And passage 25 I'm going to have to read out loud, and I might read both 25 and 26. I'm just going to read it from one, and I'm just going to read from my note here. This is an ugly passage, marrying slave wives, dividing up women's chasteness, or chastity, and allowing for submissive, passive entertainment of women. But it can also be read as changing a precept from a previous surah. Here, not allowing marriage to a Christian or a Jew, even if they are a slave, whereas before, you were allowed to marry either of those, so depending on your interpretation. Now, I'm going to read it from the Harper 1 Study Quran. Okay? And this is going to be Arats 24 and 25. And married women, save those whom your right hands possess. Thus has God prescribed for you, lawful unto you are all others whom you would seek in marriage with gifts from your property, in honest wedlock and not in fornication. And those women whom you enjoy thereby, give unto them their bride wealth as an obligation. But there is no blame on you for what you agree to after the obligation. God is knowing, wise. And whosoever among you has not the means to marry free, believing women, then the believing young woman among those whom your right hand possesses. God knows best your faith. The one of you is as the other, so wed them by the permission of their people, and give unto them their proper bride wealth, as married women, not as fornicators or paramours. And when they are married, should they commit an indecency, they shall be liable to half the punishment of free women. This is for the one among you who fears he will sin, but it is better for you to be patient. God is forgiving, merciful. Okay? So, there are many ways to interpret this. There are some ugly ways to interpret that passage, and there are some more liberal and more modern ways to interpret that passage. But one of the passages that offends other Christians who try to read the Quran is this passage. Okay? I am not offended, but I understand the underpinnings to that passage that could be misinterpreted, or, if not misinterpreted, misappropriated. And that's a problem. All right. When talking to a Western audience. I'm going to continue. 27. Ayats 27 through 28 seems to address this complaint and says these rules are only necessary because of man's weakness, that it would be better if a man did not follow their lustful desires. So, the Quran itself says that this is an ugly situation and says that it would be better for you if you didn't give in to your lust. But because men are weak, they do. And therefore, the better solution is the solution suggested by the Quran. That's debatable, and I'm not going to get into that. Okay? At least not here, at this moment. Then we get to Ayah 29. And it is a prescription for free and honest trade, and a restriction on suicide, a prohibition against covetousness and greed. Okay, and it says, don't be envious or jealous. Then we get to Ayah 34, and now this one I'm going to have to read from two versions. And it describes a man's role in an Islamic family as an authoritative figure. Here, you get the infamous passage to strike a woman for disobedience, though the commentators have tried to mitigate its significance by saying that it is only a last resort after a verbal reproach, and a type of sexual abstinence from her, meaning the woman, ignoring her, and then to only strike her without violence, which is even harder to explain. And honestly, there are harsher punishments for rebellious children in the Bible. For instance, a rebellious child is supposed to be stoned to death in the Old Testament. Okay? But the difference here is that most modern Western civilizations and cultures do not follow those particular biblical prescriptions. Okay? That's the difference. While in some Islamic societies, they do. Or Muslim nations, or however you want to word it. Let's read. And we're going to read two different versions. Okay, so we'll go first with the Harper 1. And this is Ayah 34. Men are the upholders and maintainers of women by virtue of that in which God has favored some of them above others, and by virtue of their spending from their wealth. Therefore, the righteous women are devoutly obedient, guarding in absence what God has guarded. As for those whom you fear discord and animosity, admonish them, then leave them in their beds, then strike them. Then, if they obey you, seek not a way against them. Truly, God is exultant, great. Muslim. So I can give you a different version from Surah 4. Ayah 34. Men are the maintainers of women, with what Allah has made some of them to excel others, and with what they spend out of their wealth. So, the good women are obedient, guarding the unseen as Allah has guarded. And those on whose part you fear desertion, admonish them, and leave them alone in the beds, and chastise them. So, if they obey you, seek not a way against them. Surely Allah is ever exalted, great. Now, if you notice, the Masla one does not have the striking, But a very popular online version, recitation, does. So let me go to the Penguin to show you a different one. And again, I know you guys don't like the Penguin, but it's just to show you that it's not only a single translation that has that. There are multiple translations that have that verse. Again, this is 34. Men have authority over women because God has made the one superior to the other, and because they spend their wealth to maintain them. Good women are obedient. They guard their unseen parts because God has guarded them. As for those from whom you fear disobedience, admonish them and forsake them in beds apart and beat them. Then, if they obey you, take no further action against them. Surely God is high, supreme. So, there you go. It's in there. Again, one of them gets around that, but 3 other translations, one audio, and one an older translation and one a newer translation, all have some type of striking or hitting of a woman. So that is not acceptable in today's society. Just being honest. And again, there are worse punishments for rebellious children in the Bible, in the Old Testament. I'm not saying they're not. Okay. Then we get to Surah 36. And it warns not to worship other gods, and it reminds the reader to be kind to travelers. And for us in the Christian world, we could hear that as be kind to your neighbor. Okay? And it also reminds the reader to be humble, or the reciter. Then we get to Surah 43, which forbids drinking alcohol. Here, it can also be seen that merely touching a woman can make a man unclean. And I guess I'll have to read this one also. And this is more extreme than other traditions from that time period. So, Surah 4, Surah 43. O you who believe, draw not near unto prayer when you are drunken, until you know what you are uttering, nor in a state of ritual impurity, unless you are passing through, until you have washed. But if you are ill, or on a journey, or one of you has come from satisfying a call of nature, or you have touched women, and you find no water, then resort to clean earth, and wipe your faces and your hands. Truly, God is pardoning, forgiving. There you go. So that's in there. Okay, and then we get to ayat 47 through 50, which could be seen as talking about certain Christians when you read it, but it is actually a commentary focusing on the Medina Jews. It sounds like it's talking against Christians, but according to the commentary, it's actually talking against the Medina Jews there. But later on, it will talk against Christians. So that is that section. Next, we will go on to Surah 51 through 86. I hope you enjoyed this commentary. I know there was a passage here I did not like, and I know that you guys don't like it when I don't like things. But I mean, honestly, like it didn't sit well with me. The handling of the marriage didn't sound good. I had a problem with it because in modern societies that is not acceptable. Those are not acceptable practices. But at that time period, across the world, most societies had rules like that regarding women. It's just most societies were not religious societies, while this is. Anyway, peace, like, subscribe. Talk to you all next time. Bye.